Say it again. Nathan Cole's voice was quiet enough that Bradley Knox almost missed it. Almost. The investor reception at Sterling Aeronautics had been loud a moment earlier, filled with polished laughter, clinking glasses, and men speaking confidently about billions of dollars that did not belong to them. Now the nearest conversations had begun to fade. Rebecca Sterling stood at the center of a semicircle of executives, one hand resting on the edge of a high cocktail table, her expression composed despite the heat rising beneath her collar. Bradley smiled at Nathan as if a hotel employee had interrupted a board meeting. "Excuse me." Nathan stepped closer. Dark suit, plain tie, no executive badge, no expensive watch. Nothing about him suggested he belonged in a room where people measured influence by stock ownership and last names. "You heard me," he said. Bradley gave a short laugh and looked toward Evan Price. "Apparently Facilities is giving investment advice now." A few people smiled. Rebecca did not. Nathan had spent most of the evening near the service entrance, checking access points for an event security review no one important had bothered to ask about. That was fine with him. Being overlooked had advantages. He had watched Bradley place the contract in front of Rebecca. He had watched two board members raise their phones before the argument even began. He had watched Evan position himself beside the only witness whose signature could later be called independent. None of it felt accidental. "Mr. Cole," Rebecca said quietly, "this is not your problem." Nathan looked at her. "Maybe not." Bradley leaned toward Rebecca. "See? Even he understands." Then he raised his voice enough for the surrounding investors to hear. "You are holding this company hostage because you cannot separate emotion from leadership." Rebecca's jaw tightened. Bradley continued. "Your father built Sterling Aeronautics. You inherited it. Some of us actually know what it takes to protect it." The room changed. Not loudly. Cruelty rarely needed volume when status was doing the work. Rebecca absorbed the insult without moving. Her father had been dead 6 years. Everyone in that room knew she had taken a regional aerospace supplier and turned it into one of the most respected advanced aviation firms on the West Coast. They knew it. Bradley knew it. That was why he had chosen the wound carefully. "Sign the consortium agreement," he said, pushing the folder toward her. "Or admit you are not qualified to sit in that chair." Rebecca looked down at the papers. Phones were still recording. Evan smiled. Bradley waited. Nathan did not. 15 seconds, he said. Bradley turned. "What?" Nathan checked the wall clock. "That is about how long this takes." Laughter returned, smaller this time. Bradley spread his hands. "Please, entertain us." Nathan stepped beside the table but did not touch the contract. "First, page 14 says the agreement was approved by the board at 4:10 this afternoon." Rebecca looked up. Nathan continued. "The board meeting ended at 3:52. Evan's smile vanished. Nathan looked toward the two phones. "Second, you started recording before Ms. Sterling refused anything, which means you expected a confrontation before there was one." Bradley's face tightened. Nathan's eyes moved to the witness standing beside Evan. "Third, Mr. Price is listed as an independent board witness." Evan shifted. Nathan glanced at the man's lapel badge. "He reports to Mr. Knox's investment group." Silence. 3 observations. 15 seconds. No threats. No anger. Just facts placed gently where arrogance had expected fear. Rebecca stared at Nathan. Bradley's expression hardened. "Who exactly are you?" Nathan looked at him with the calm of a man who had spent years learning that the strongest response was often the one delivered without heat. "Someone who recognizes an ambush." Nobody laughed this time. And in the silence that followed, Rebecca realized the quiet single father standing beside her had not stepped in because he thought she was weak. He had stepped in because everyone else had mistaken her dignity for permission. 6 hours earlier, Nathan Cole had been standing in a small kitchen outside Seattle, cutting a grilled cheese sandwich in half because his 10-year-old daughter insisted triangles tasted better than squares. Lucy sat at the table in mismatched socks, finishing a spelling worksheet while rain pressed softly against the windows. "You are staring at the clock again," she said. Nathan poured coffee into a travel mug. "I am checking the time." "Same thing." "Not exactly. You do it when you are worried." Nathan looked at her. Lucy smiled without looking up. "I noticed things too." That almost made him laugh. Almost. The house was modest, clean, and carefully ordinary. A school calendar hung beside the refrigerator. Soccer practice on Tuesday. Dentist on Thursday. Grocery list on Friday. Nathan liked ordinary. Ordinary meant Lucy could sleep without hearing strangers at the door. Ordinary meant he could worry about permission slips instead of evacuation routes. You working late? She asked. Investor event. Important people? They think so. Lucy grinned. Are you important? Nathan slid the sandwich into her lunch container. I'm the guy who makes sure doors lock and cameras work. That sounds important. He looked at her for a second. Children had a way of seeing dignity before adults learned to price it. Maybe. Nathan had taken the facilities consulting job at Sterling Aeronautics 3 months earlier because the hours were predictable and the benefits were good. He had not mentioned the years before that. Not to coworkers. Not to executives. Not even to Rebecca Sterling, whose signature sat at the bottom of his contract. His personnel file listed Navy service, honorable discharge, and little else. That was enough. The rest belonged to a life Nathan had buried when Lucy's mother, Amanda, died after a short illness 4 years earlier. He had spent too many nights learning that some battles could not be solved by preparation. After that, he stopped looking for danger and started looking for bedtime routines. Dad, Lucy was watching him now. You disappeared. Still here. In your head. Nathan picked up his keys. Finish breakfast. That means yes. He drove her 7 miles to school under a gray sky. At the curb, Lucy opened the passenger door, then paused. You are picking me up tomorrow, right? Yes. Promise. Nathan looked at her. Promises meant more to him now than medals ever had. Promise. She ran toward the entrance. Nathan watched until she disappeared inside, then drove toward Sterling Aeronautics. By 8:15, he was walking the event floor with a tablet in one hand, checking service entrances, emergency lighting, and temporary camera placements for the evening reception. Most executives passed him without acknowledgement. Bradley Knox did not. Bradley stopped near the main ballroom doors and looked at Nathan's badge. Facilities consultant? Yes. Make sure the west entrance stays clear. We have actual business happening tonight. Nathan nodded. Understood. Evan Price, standing beside Bradley, smirked. And keep the maintenance people out of camera range. Nathan said nothing. Bradley looked almost disappointed. No opinion? About camera range? About anything. Nathan checked the access panel beside the door. Plenty. Just not worth sharing? Nathan looked up. Not yet. Bradley laughed and walked away with Evan. Nathan watched them go. He had heard contempt before. Different clothes. Same rhythm. He returned to his inspection without taking it personally. Pride was expensive, and Lucy needed stability more than he needed strangers to understand him. At 11:43, Nathan noticed the first thing that did not fit. A temporary recording station had been requested for the investor reception under Bradley Knox's authorization. At 12:10, an internal conference room had been reassigned without Rebecca Sterling's approval. At 12:26, Nathan found printed copies of a consortium agreement placed at 3 separate cocktail tables before any negotiation had been scheduled. He stopped beside the ballroom entrance and looked across the empty room. 3 details. Too early to mean anything. Too coordinated to ignore. Nathan slipped the tablet under his arm and continued walking. He had spent years training himself not to imagine ambushes where none existed. But some habits were not fear. Some habits were simply paying attention. By 2:30 that afternoon, Rebecca Sterling had already ended one board call, rejected a revised acquisition offer, and reminded 3 senior executives that the company still carried her family name for a reason. She stood at the head of a glass conference table on the 24th floor, a charcoal suit sharply tailored, chestnut hair pinned back, gray eyes moving across a financial projection that everyone else in the room seemed eager to approve. No, she said. Silence followed. Bradley Knox leaned back in his chair. You have not even heard the full proposal. I read it at 6 this morning. Then you know the consortium is offering a premium. I know they are offering money. Rebecca closed the report. That is not the same thing as value. Evan Price folded his hands. You are letting sentiment interfere with strategy. Rebecca looked at him. Which sentiment? Your father's legacy. The room shifted. Her father had built Sterling Aeronautics from a 12-person engineering shop into a company trusted with advanced aviation systems. Rebecca had spent the last 6 years proving she had inherited more than his last name. Revenue had doubled. Research funding had tripled. Employee turnover had fallen. Yet men like Bradley still spoke about her leadership as if she had been handed a throne rather than a company carrying debt, pressure, and thousands of livelihoods. "This is not about my father," she said. "Then what is it about?" Bradley asked. "Control." He smiled. "Exactly." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "Not yours." The smile disappeared. Outside the glass walls, Seattle remained gray beneath the afternoon rain. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee, polished wood, and expensive patience running out. Rebecca touched the folder in front of her. "The consortium wants exclusive rights to our adaptive flight control platform for 7 years. At extraordinary compensation," Evans said. "And they want authority over future licensing. Standard protection. For them." Bradley leaned forward. "You are risking shareholder confidence because you do not like the optics." Rebecca looked around the table. "I do not like surrendering technology our engineers spent 11 years developing to people who want control without responsibility." No one answered immediately. Then Bradley gave a soft laugh. "There it is." "What?" "Emotion." Rebecca held his gaze. "You keep using that word when a woman disagrees with you." The room went quiet again. Bradley's face remained pleasant, but the warmth was gone. "Careful." Rebecca's voice stayed even. That sounded almost like advice. The meeting ended 20 minutes later without agreement. Rebecca remained alone after everyone left, looking at the rain sliding down the windows. Her assistant, Hannah Moore, entered carrying a fresh schedule. "You moved the reception briefing?" Rebecca asked. "No," Hannah stopped. "I thought you did." Rebecca looked down. The investor reception had been shifted forward by 30 minutes. A private pre-signing discussion had appeared beneath it. Who added this? Executive Relations. Bradley. His office. Rebecca exhaled slowly. "Cancel it." Hannah hesitated. "They have already invited 2 board witnesses." Rebecca looked up. "Witnesses to what?" "I do not know." That answer bothered her more than she wanted to admit. She picked up the consortium folder and flipped to the signature page. 2 names had already been typed beneath hers. Evan Price. Martin Keller. These were not here this morning. Hannah came closer. "Are you sure?" Rebecca gave her a look. Hannah immediately nodded. "Right." "Stupid question." Rebecca closed the folder. "Find out who printed this version." "I will." When Hannah left, Rebecca stood alone again. She had survived investor revolts, supply chain failures, regulatory audits, and the quiet cruelty of rooms where people smiled while waiting for her to fail. She knew pressure. This felt different. Too organized. Too eager. At 3:48, she stepped into the hallway and nearly collided with Nathan Cole carrying a tablet and a roll of temporary access badges. He moved aside immediately. "Sorry." Rebecca glanced at his badge. "Facilities. Consulting. Is there a difference?" Nathan looked at her. "Usually the invoice." Despite herself, she almost smiled. Then he noticed the folder in her hand. "Consortium agreement?" Rebecca stopped. "How do you know that?" "Copies are already in the ballroom." Her expression hardened. "What copies?" 3 tables. Same document. Rebecca stared at him. "No one authorized distribution." Nathan's face remained calm. "I figured." "Why?" "Because people do not usually stage evidence before a decision unless they already know what story they want told afterward." Rebecca said nothing. Nathan glanced toward the conference room behind her, then at the reception schedule posted on the wall. "Who moved your briefing?" "Bradley's office." "Who added the witnesses?" "Same." Nathan nodded once. "And who controls tonight's recording station?" Rebecca looked at him more carefully. "Bradley." 3 answers. 1 pattern. Nathan stepped back as if the conversation were finished. Rebecca did not let him leave. "Mr. Cole." He turned. "What exactly are you seeing?" Nathan looked toward the ballroom doors at the end of the corridor. "I do not know yet." "That is not reassuring." "It is honest." She studied him. No flattery. No nervousness. No attempt to impress her. Just a quiet man with observant eyes and a file that revealed almost nothing about who he had been before Sterling Aeronautics. "Then tell me when you do know." Nathan nodded. "I will." Rebecca watched him walk away. For the first time that day, the uneasiness in her chest had a shape. Someone was not trying to convince her to sign. Someone was preparing the room for what happened when she refused. By 5:30, the reception floor was full enough to hide intention inside noise. Investors moved between polished cocktail tables, servers carried trays beneath soft amber lights, and small groups formed wherever influence seemed most concentrated. Rebecca entered through the main doors with Hannah beside her and Bradley already waiting near the center of the room. Nathan stood farther back near a service corridor, tablet tucked beneath one arm, watching without appearing to watch. "Rebecca," Bradley called. "There you are." She approached slowly. "You moved my briefing. We improved the timing. Without asking me. You have been difficult to reach." Hannah glanced at Rebecca. They both knew that was false. Bradley continued before she could answer. "The consortium representatives are ready. The witnesses are here. We can resolve this tonight." Rebecca looked toward the table. The contract was already open to the signature page. 2 pens had been placed beside it. Evan Price stood nearby with his phone in his hand. Martin Keller, the supposed independent witness, was speaking quietly with one of Bradley's investment advisors. Nathan noticed the exchange. Then he noticed something else. A temporary camera had been angled away from the broader room and toward Rebecca's side of the table. "Not security. Documentation. You planned this as a signing," Rebecca said. Bradley smiled. "We planned for leadership. I never agreed." "Then say no." His voice rose slightly. Several conversations nearby softened. Evan lifted his phone. There it was. Nathan looked at the wall clock. 5:37. The confrontation was not happening by accident. It was being staged on schedule. Bradley pushed the folder toward Rebecca. "Tell them why." Rebecca did not touch it. "Because the licensing terms give the consortium control over future distribution. That is a legal interpretation. It is written on page 9. You are exaggerating." "No, then perhaps this is another example of you protecting your father's memory instead of the company." A few heads turned. Rebecca's expression stayed composed. Nathan watched the nearest camera. Recording light active. Evan's phone. Recording. A second investor near the windows. Also recording. 3 angles, all focused on Rebecca. Bradley continued. "Your father knew when to make hard decisions." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "Do not use him to pressure me. I am trying to remind you what leadership looks like." "I know exactly what leadership looks like." Bradley laughed softly. "Do you?" The insult was quiet enough to pretend it was professional. That made it worse. Nathan did not move yet. Rebecca had not lost control. That was important. He was not there to speak for her. Bradley wanted exactly that appearance, a woman becoming emotional while powerful men stayed calm and reasonable. Nathan had seen versions of the same tactic before. Different setting. Same mechanics. Create pressure. Control witnesses. Record reaction. Rewrite context later. Bradley turned toward the surrounding investors. "We have given Ms. Sterling every opportunity to act responsibly." Rebecca looked at him. "You mean agree with you?" Evan smiled. "You are proving the concern." Rebecca's eyes moved toward his phone. "And what concern is that?" "That personal attachment is affecting executive judgment." Nathan saw her hand tighten slightly at her side. "Not much." "Enough." Bradley saw it too. He stepped closer to the table. "Sign, Rebecca." "No." "Then explain why shareholders should trust someone who cannot separate legacy from logic." The room became quieter. Nathan checked the time. 5:38. Right on cue. He looked at the contract again. Then at Martin Keller's badge. Then at the recording station. The pattern was complete now. He stepped away from the service corridor. Hannah noticed first. Rebecca noticed second. Bradley noticed last. Nathan stopped several feet from the table. "Mr. Knox." Bradley turned with visible irritation. "Not now." Nathan's voice stayed calm. "Actually, now is probably the best time." Evan lowered his phone slightly. Bradley gave a dismissive smile. "This is a private investor matter." Nathan looked around the room. "Then you picked an unusual audience." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca watched him carefully. Nathan continued. "You moved the briefing. You arranged the witnesses. You started recording before she refused." Bradley's expression cooled. "You are facilities. Consulting. Stay in your lane." Nathan looked at the open contract. "I am." Bradley laughed once. "And what lane is that?" Nathan met his eyes. Making sure people notice when something was set up before they walked into it. The room went still. Rebecca did not need rescuing. But now, for the first time, everyone could see the trap she had been standing inside. Bradley looked at Nathan as if silence alone might restore the balance of the room. It did not. The investors around them were no longer watching Rebecca. They were watching him. "You have made your point," Bradley said. Nathan shook his head. "Not yet." Evan gave a short laugh. "This is absurd." Nathan turned toward him, then put the phone down. Evan's smile disappeared. "Why?" "Because if this was really a spontaneous disagreement, you would not have started recording before Ms. Sterling said no." A few people glanced toward Evan's screen. He lowered it slowly. Rebecca remained still beside the table, letting Nathan expose the structure without taking the decision away from her. That mattered. Nathan looked at the open contract. Page 14 says board approval happened at 4:10. Bradley folded his arms. Correct. The board meeting ended at 3:52. Administrative timing. Then why does the document say approval occurred 18 minutes after the meeting closed? Bradley's jaw tightened. Evan stepped in. Clerical error. Nathan nodded once. Maybe. He looked toward Martin Keller. Mr. Keller, you are listed as an independent witness. Martin straightened. I am. Independent of Sterling Aeronautics? Yes. Independent of Mr. Knox? A pause. Bradley answered for him. That is irrelevant. Nathan looked at Bradley. He works through a consulting firm retained by your investment group. Martin's face changed. Rebecca turned toward him. Is that true? Martin hesitated. Our firm has several clients. Including Knox Capital? Rebecca asked. Yes. Silence. Nathan did not celebrate the admission. He simply moved to the third point. And the temporary camera facing this table was requested under Mr. Knox's authorization before the reception began. Bradley looked toward the recording station. Standard documentation. Then why is it aimed only at Ms. Sterling's position? No one answered. Nathan checked the wall clock. 15 seconds had passed since he began laying out the pattern. 3 facts. 1 silence. Everything had changed. Bradley no longer looked like the reasonable investor confronting an emotional chief executive. He looked like a man standing inside a plan that had become visible too early. Rebecca picked up the contract. You wanted footage. Bradley looked at her. I wanted accountability. No, her voice stayed calm. You wanted a reaction. Evan shifted. Rebecca continued. You moved the meeting. You arranged the witnesses. You placed recording devices before any refusal existed. She looked around at the investors surrounding them. Then you attacked my judgment, my father, and my leadership in front of cameras you controlled. Bradley gave a thin smile. You are making this dramatic. Rebecca closed the folder. Actually, I think you did that. A quiet murmur passed through the room. Nathan stepped back half a pace. This was her moment now. Bradley pointed toward him. And you are taking advice from a facilities consultant? Rebecca looked at Nathan. No, Nathan met her eyes. She is taking advice from the evidence. Rebecca's expression softened by the smallest degree. Then she turned back to Bradley. The signing is canceled. You cannot simply walk away from this. Watch me. The board will hear about it. Good. Rebecca placed the contract on the table. They can hear about the false timestamp, the conflicted witness, and the staged recording too. Bradley's face hardened. You think he saved you? Rebecca glanced at Nathan. He was already moving back toward the service corridor, as if being noticed had become uncomfortable. No, she said. He gave everyone else 15 seconds to see what I had been standing in for months. Bradley said nothing. Neither did Evan. The room that had laughed at Rebecca only minutes earlier had gone completely still. Nathan picked up his tablet. Rebecca followed him with her eyes. Mr. Cole. He stopped. Who are you? Nathan looked toward the contract, then toward the men who had mistaken restraint for weakness. Someone who has seen bad rooms before. Then he walked away, leaving Rebecca with a question none of Bradley's documents could answer. Rebecca found Nathan 20 minutes later in a quiet service corridor behind the reception hall, checking a temporary access panel as if nothing unusual had happened. The noise of the investor event was muted behind 2 closed doors. Here there were no cameras pointed at faces, no glasses clinking, no people pretending cruelty was strategy. Just fluorescent light, gray carpet, and Nathan standing with a tablet in one hand. Rebecca stopped several feet away. You walked away. Nathan looked up. It was handled. You exposed a staged confrontation in front of half my investors, and then disappeared. You did not need me standing beside you afterward. That is not what I asked. Nathan studied her. What are you asking? Rebecca folded her arms. Who are you? Facilities consultant. She gave him a flat look. Try again. Nathan glanced toward the closed ballroom doors. Someone who notices patterns. That is not a normal answer. It is the honest one. Rebecca stepped closer. You saw the witnesses. The camera placement. The timing. You knew exactly what Bradley was trying to do before anyone else in that room understood it. Nathan said nothing. And when he insulted me, you did not react like an employee defending his boss. You did not need defending. Rebecca's expression shifted. Then why step in? Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Because there is a difference between letting someone fight their own battle and standing by while the rules are being changed around them. The words landed quietly. Rebecca looked toward the floor, then back at him. Most people in that room either wanted me to sign or wanted to see what happened when I refused. I noticed. You keep saying that. Because that is what happened. She almost smiled, but the tension remained. What did you mean when you said you had seen bad rooms before? Nathan's face closed slightly. Not fear. Habit. Old work. Military. He did not answer. Rebecca noticed that too. Your file says Navy. It does. It also says almost nothing else. Nathan looked back at the access panel. Then the file is accurate. That is not funny. Was not trying to be. Rebecca sighed. You are difficult. I have been told. Silence settled between them. Then Nathan's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. Lucy. The change in his face was immediate. Softer. Human in a way Rebecca had not seen all evening. You should answer that, she said. Nathan did. Hey, kiddo. Lucy's voice was faint through the phone, bright and impatient. You promised to call before bedtime. Nathan checked the time. I know. You forgot. I am calling now. That is not the same thing. Rebecca looked away to give him privacy, but she heard enough to understand. I will be home soon, Nathan said. A pause. Promise. His voice softened. Promise. He ended the call. Rebecca looked at him. Your daughter. Lucy. 10. Single father? Nathan nodded. For years. Rebecca's tone changed. I did not know. Most people here do not. Why keep everything so private? Nathan slid the phone into his pocket. Because some parts of your life are better when they are not turned into introductions. Rebecca held his gaze. And the Navy? Nathan's expression remained still. Same answer. Before she could press further, a man's voice came from the far end of the corridor. Nathan Cole. Nathan froze. Rebecca turned. An older man in his early 60s stood beneath the fluorescent light, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit with a small navy lapel pin. He stared at Nathan as if a memory had just walked out of the wall. Captain Harris, Nathan said quietly. The man took 2 steps closer. I heard you left Washington. I came back. Harris looked at Rebecca, then at Nathan again. Does she know? Nathan's jaw tightened. Know what? Rebecca asked. Harris's expression changed from surprise to something closer to respect. That the man reviewing her service doors used to lead naval special warfare teams. The corridor went completely silent. Rebecca looked at Nathan. Nathan did not look proud. He looked tired. Former, he said. Harris shook his head slowly. Some things do not become former just because you stop wearing the uniform. Rebecca stared at the quiet single father she had dismissed as facilities only hours earlier. Suddenly the calm, the timing, the refusal to panic, and the way he had read the room all belonged to a past he had never once tried to use for status. Nathan looked at Harris. Lucy is waiting. Harris nodded. Then go home. Rebecca watched Nathan pick up his tablet. Mr. Cole. He stopped. You still have not answered my question. Nathan looked back at her. Which one? Who are you? For the first time that night, he gave the smallest smile. A dad who notices things. Then he walked away, leaving Rebecca with a silence that felt less like mystery and more like respect. Rebecca did not sleep much that night. By 8 the next morning, she was already in her office with the consortium agreement open across her desk and 3 separate audit reports waiting beside it. Bradley Knox had sent 2 emails before sunrise. Evan Price had sent one. None of them addressed the false timestamp, the conflicted witness, or the staged recording. They all used the same language. Misunderstanding. Optics. Overreaction. Rebecca read every word and felt the same quiet anger return. At 9:15, Hannah entered carrying a sealed internal report. You asked for every proxy authorization connected to Knox Capital. Rebecca looked up, and Hannah placed the folder down. You were right to ask. Rebecca opened it. 12 shareholder proxies had been reassigned within the last 6 weeks. 5 belonged to investors who had not attended a board meeting in months. 3 had signatures that did not match earlier filings. 2 had been submitted after internal deadlines, but were still marked valid. Rebecca looked at Hannah. Who approved these? Executive governance. Who supervises executive governance? Hannah hesitated. Evan. Rebecca leaned back slowly. The room became very quiet. Bradley had not been trying to win one argument. He had been building numbers. Votes. Pressure. A story about unstable leadership supported by staged footage and manufactured consensus. Find Nathan, Rebecca said. Hannah raised an eyebrow. Facilities Nathan? Rebecca gave her a look. Just find him. 10 minutes later, Nathan stepped into the office carrying his tablet and wearing the same calm expression that irritated people who wanted him impressed. You call. Rebecca pointed toward the proxy file. Read this. Nathan did not sit. He scanned the first page, then the second. His eyes slowed at the signatures. These do not belong together. Why? Same spacing pattern. Same scan compression. Rebecca frowned. Meaning? Different names. Same processing method. He turned another page. And these four were uploaded from the same internal terminal. Rebecca stared at him. You saw that in 30 seconds. Nathan shrugged slightly. It is on the metadata line. She looked down. He was right. How did my legal team miss it? They were probably looking for legal problems. And you? I look for patterns. Rebecca folded her arms. There is that answer again. Nathan looked toward the window. You called me here for more than compliments. I did not compliment you. Good. She almost smiled. Then she turned serious. Bradley is trying to force control of the company. Nathan nodded. Looks that way. Through manipulated proxies, staged recordings, and board pressure. Probably. You sound very calm. You already know what it is now. Rebecca looked at him. And that changes everything? Usually. She tapped the folder. What would you do? Nathan was silent for a moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat across from her for the first time. I would stop reacting to Bradley. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Explain. He wants you defending yourself. Every minute you spend proving you are not emotional, not sentimental, not unqualified. He controls the question. So what question should I be asking? Nathan looked at the proxy list. Who benefits if everyone believes you are the problem? Rebecca sat back. The answer was obvious now. Bradley. Evan. The consortium. Nathan continued. Do not fight their story. Then what? Make them defend theirs. Silence. Rebecca looked down at the evidence. False timestamps. Conflicted witness. Unauthorized recordings. Proxy irregularities. Internal uploads. For months, she had been answering attacks one by one. Nathan had just shown her the shape connecting them. There is an emergency board session at 2, she said. Bradley requested it. Good. Good. Nathan nodded. Let him bring the room. Rebecca studied him. You are coming. Why? Because I want you there. You do not need me. I know. That stopped him. Rebecca leaned forward. I am not asking you to rescue me, Nathan. I am asking you to watch the room. His expression softened by the smallest degree. That I can do. At 2 o'clock, Bradley entered the boardroom with Evan beside him and 6 directors already seated. Rebecca arrived last, carrying one folder. Nathan stood quietly near the rear wall. Bradley smiled when he saw him. You brought facilities? Rebecca took her seat. No. She placed the folder on the table. I brought a witness. Bradley's smile faded. Rebecca opened the first page. Now let us talk about who has really been controlling this company. And for the first time, Bradley Knox looked like a man who had walked into a room Nathan had already read. Bradley Knox opened with confidence because confidence had worked for him for years. This emergency session was requested because Ms. Sterling's recent decisions have created serious concerns about leadership stability. Rebecca sat at the head of the table without interrupting. Evan Price distributed a packet to the directors. Nathan remained near the rear wall, hands relaxed, expression unreadable. Bradley continued. We have delayed a major consortium agreement, damaged investor confidence, and allowed personal sentiment to override fiduciary responsibility. Rebecca looked at him. Finished. Bradley smiled. For now. Good. She opened her folder. Then let us start with the proxy votes. Evan shifted in his chair. Rebecca placed 12 documents on the table. These were reassigned within 6 weeks. 5 belong to investors who have not attended recent meetings. 3 signatures do not match earlier filings. 2 were submitted after the deadline and still marked valid. 1 director leaned forward. Who approved them? Rebecca looked at Evan. Executive governance. Evan cleared his throat. Administrative errors happen. 12 times. You are implying misconduct without proof. Nathan watched the room. Bradley had expected Rebecca to defend herself. Instead, she was making them explain the system they had built. That changed the balance. Rebecca slid another page forward. 4 of these documents were uploaded from the same internal terminal. Evan's face tightened. Which terminal? a director asked. Rebecca answered calmly. Executive Governance Workstation 7. Silence. Evan looked toward Bradley. Nathan noticed. Rebecca noticed Nathan noticing. Mr. Price, she continued, who had access to Workstation 7. Several people. Names. Evan hesitated. Myself. 2 governance managers. Mr. Knox during executive reviews. Bradley leaned forward. This is becoming absurd. Rebecca turned to him. Then explained the reception. We already did. No. You called it a misunderstanding. She placed the consortium agreement beside the proxy records. This document says board approval occurred at 4:10. The board meeting ended at 3:52. Bradley's jaw tightened. Clerical mistake. The witness listed as independent works for a firm retained by your investment group. Common industry overlap. The recording equipment was authorized by your office before I was ever asked to sign. Bradley spread his hands. Documentation. Rebecca nodded. Exactly. The room went still. She looked around the table. You documented a reaction before there was a decision. You prepared witnesses before there was a dispute. You collected proxies before there was a vote. Bradley's voice hardened. Be careful what you are accusing me of. Rebecca did not raise hers. I am not accusing you yet. She looked toward Nathan. Mr. Cole. Every head turned. Nathan stepped forward only far enough to be heard. Bradley gave a dismissive laugh. Facilities is testifying now. Nathan ignored the insult. I reviewed the temporary event systems yesterday. And? Bradley asked. The recording request was submitted at 11:43 in the morning. Rebecca looked at the directors. Nathan continued. The private briefing was reassigned at 12:10. The consortium documents were placed in the ballroom at 12:26. One director frowned. The reception was not until evening. Correct. Nathan looked at Bradley. The room was prepared before Ms. Sterling made any decision. Bradley stared at him. You are drawing conclusions. No, Nathan's voice stayed calm. I am giving times. 3 times. 3 facts. No drama. The silence afterward did the rest. Bradley turned back to Rebecca. You think this proves a takeover? Rebecca shook her head. Not by itself. Then she opened the final section of the folder. But combined with manipulated proxies, controlled witnesses, coordinated recordings, and internal reports describing me as unstable before any public dispute, it proves enough to suspend this process. Evan went pale. One of the independent directors removed his glasses. There are reports? Rebecca slid copies across the table. Drafted 2 weeks ago. Bradley stopped smiling. Rebecca continued. They described yesterday's confrontation almost exactly. The room froze. Nathan saw the moment happen. Not victory. Recognition. The directors were no longer asking whether Rebecca was emotional. They were asking who had written the story before she lived it. Bradley looked toward Evan. Evan looked down. Rebecca closed the folder. I am requesting an independent forensic audit, immediate suspension of all disputed proxies, and removal of Mr. Knox and Mr. Price from any vote involving the consortium until the review is complete. A director nodded. Then another. Bradley pushed back from the table. You are making a mistake. Rebecca held his gaze. No, her voice was quiet. I finally stopped answering the question you wanted me to answer. He frowned. Which question? Rebecca looked around the room, then back at him. Whether I deserve to lead. She placed one hand on the evidence. Now you get to explain why you tried so hard to make everyone doubt it. No one laughed. No one interrupted. And Nathan Cole, standing silently near the wall, knew the most important thing had already happened. Rebecca had not been rescued. She had reclaimed the room herself. 6 weeks later, the independent audit was complete. Bradley Knox had resigned from every committee connected to Sterling Aeronautics. Evan Price was removed from executive governance. The disputed proxies were voided, the consortium agreement was suspended, and the board adopted new controls requiring outside review for major shareholder authorizations. Rebecca remained chief executive officer. Not because Nathan had saved her position. Because once the room stopped laughing long enough to look at the evidence, she proved exactly why she belonged there. On a quiet Saturday evening, Nathan was standing in his kitchen trying to convince Lucy that frozen pizza did not count as a balanced meal when the doorbell rang. Lucy looked toward the hallway. You expecting someone? No, then it is probably important. That is not how doorbells work. Could be. Nathan opened the door and found Rebecca Sterling standing beneath the porch light, holding a bakery box in one hand and a bottle of sparkling cider in the other. No charcoal suit, no assistants, no board members, just dark jeans, a cream sweater, and an expression Nathan had never seen in a conference room. Nervous. Ms. Sterling. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Still doing that? Doing what? Calling me Ms. Sterling when I am standing on your porch with pie. Lucy appeared behind him. What kind? Rebecca smiled. Apple. Lucy looked at Nathan. She can come in. Nathan sighed. Apparently the security review is complete. Rebecca stepped inside. The house smelled like tomato sauce, laundry detergent, and the cinnamon candle Lucy insisted made everything feel expensive. Rebecca looked around at the school papers on the refrigerator, the framed photograph of Amanda beside the hallway, and the soccer cleats abandoned near the stairs. Nathan noticed where her eyes stopped. That is Lucy's mom, he said. Rebecca nodded gently. She was beautiful. She was. No awkwardness. No apology. Just respect. That mattered. Dinner was simple. Pizza, salad Rebecca brought because Lucy declared vegetables were required only if someone else prepared them. An apple pie that disappeared faster than Nathan expected. Rebecca listened while Lucy explained a science project involving paper airplanes. Dad says you build real airplanes. We build parts that help them fly. Dad says that is complicated. Rebecca looked at Nathan. Your dad understands complicated things better than he admits. Lucy nodded seriously. He does that. Nathan pointed toward her plate. Eat. Later, Lucy carried her dishes upstairs and announced she had homework, though Nathan suspected she was giving them privacy with the subtlety only a 10-year-old could consider sophisticated. Rebecca stood near the kitchen window. I came to thank you. Nathan shook his head. You already did. Not properly. Rebecca, let me finish. He went quiet. She looked at him. For months, people kept telling me I needed someone to protect me from my own decisions. You were the first person who understood I did not need rescuing. Nathan leaned against the counter. You needed evidence. I needed room. A pause. You gave me that. Nathan looked down. 15 seconds. Rebecca smiled faintly. 15 seconds changed the room. You changed what happened after. Because you made them stop long enough to see it. Silence settled between them, warm this time. Rebecca glanced toward the stairs. Lucy asked if I would come back next Saturday. Nathan almost smiled. She plans aggressively. I like her. That makes one of us. From upstairs came Lucy's voice. I heard that. Rebecca laughed. Nathan did too. Then she looked at him more carefully. Do you ever stop being on guard? Nathan's smile faded slightly. Working on it. Maybe start with dinner. Is that an order? Invitation. He held her gaze. Next Saturday? If you want. Nathan thought about promises, quiet rooms, and second chances arriving without warning. Then he nodded. Stay for dinner. Rebecca smiled. I already did. I meant next week. Good. She picked up her coat. At the door, she stopped. Nathan? Yeah. You know what I remember most about that night? Bradley's face. Tempting. She smiled. You never stood in front of me. You stood beside me. Nathan said nothing. Rebecca opened the door. That is why I came back. She stepped onto the porch, then looked over her shoulder. See you Saturday. Nathan watched her walk toward her car. Behind him, Lucy appeared silently on the stairs. You like her? Nathan did not turn around. Go to bed. That means yes. He smiled despite himself. And sometimes dignity does not win by shouting louder than cruelty. Sometimes it needs only 15 quiet seconds, one person willing to notice what everyone else ignored, and enough grace to step aside when the truth is finally strong enough to stand on its own.